was very interesting session as well. I attended that one, and I was thinking that it's really linked to this afternoon session very much, because for us this is a social science, and very interesting to also know that how this disruptive technology has come and also played a very important part in our life. Okay, and for this afternoon session, before we go into the talks for this afternoon session, I'd like to promote something about the evaluation form. I guess that everyone who's here has received the evaluation form, right? Have you received the evaluation form? It's a paper form. We need to, I would like to ask for your collaboration to fill that form, okay? Later, at least give me the form back, the filled form back, and if we have a little prize for you guys, that will be very interesting things here, as a reward. Okay, please submit that later when we finish the session. And for this session, I'd like to announce the topic and also the keynote speakers. It's very honored for us to have our keynote speakers here. We have 3 keynote speakers together for this afternoon session. For the first topic, okay, we will have the chance to listen to the globalization and populism. And this is a social and political implications and rapid technological change. This is going to be the first topic for this afternoon. And the second topic will be fintech, the new normal. How come fintech has become the new normal for us? Okay, and the third topic, it is about the integrity of the professional, justice of the system. And we like to say that, well, the integrity, personal integrity and professional integrity will play an important role in our business and in this rapid changing world, how the integrity will play a part. Okay, and I'd like to introduce the first keynote speaker for this session on the topic of the globalization and populism, social and political implication of rapid technological change. And our professor actually flew from New Zealand, but not recently, right? He has been to Thailand 4 months. I have interviewed him this morning, and he has been in Shanghai for 4 months, and it's very great honor for us to have him here at our session. And he is from the University of Canterbury in New Zealand, and the fields of his research is about the Southeast Asia politics, about the democratization, civil-military relations, and nationalism, and also Chinese politics. Okay. Well, I think he expands that into the Thai politics as well. We'll come and have a listen. And his research fields, also his research interest is about the comparative politics and Southeast Asia. And he has experienced a lot about the Asian countries and have been around in Asia for many years. Have the experience, have been to Thailand, I think, countless times. It's a very great honor to welcome our professor. I'd like everyone to join me to welcome Professor Dr. James Oldby. Yes, please.
Thank you, that's very kind. Can you hear me without the microphone? Better if you did. The first thing I want to say is I'm not anti-globalization. I'm a problem solver. There are lots of problems, and I'm not the way globalization is proceeding. And the new City Hall. We also have new things, but you can see right next to the new City Hall is a building so old it actually has a false facade. All the kind we used to see in the Old West, and still sometimes see in Old Western movies. Ephraim, Utah is a very typical, in many ways, American town. It's also got its negative side right now. Right there on the right, 1907, that's the Bank of Ephraim. It is now also the bankrupt Bank of Ephraim. There's our local hotel, which is closed, hasn't been open for years. This one is so closed and it's falling apart. You can see weeds in the parking lot. It's the only major factory the town of Ephraim has ever had. It closed in the 1970s. And you can see it's just nothing here. And that leads to foreclosures. Foreclosures, but even wealthier people have their homes foreclosed. What's going on in the United States? There you go. Ephraim is a small town far from Mexico, but we still have a very large migrant community from Mexico. You can see they tend to be in not very good housing. This was condemned not long ago, and they were going to be evicted. This is right on the outskirts of Ephraim. That's actually the cemetery right here, this green spot. Anybody guess what that building is? That one building is the reason why Ephraim is better off than any town with a profit offers around, despite all the erosion that I just shown you. A typical small town America. That building is a Walmart. America is turned into a Walmart, geographically centered style economy. There's a Walmart every 50 kilometers. And if your town is the one that got the Walmart, you'll be okay. And if you're any other town that didn't get the Walmart, it's even worse. This is where populism goes. Ephraim, Utah, population has doubled since 1990. That's far higher than state and national rates. People are moving here because it's one of the few places that have jobs. Still 90% white, but there's a growing minority community, 10% Hispanic. The entire town has about 60 people from Asia, and a handful of people from other races. 31% of all people in Utah live below the poverty line. We seldom think of countries like the U.S. having high levels of poverty. But 1 in 3 people in Utah are below the poverty line. Unemployment is 4.4%. That's not bad, but it's twice what it is in the big cities. And so people move out in large numbers. And in fact, Utah has a male to female ratio of 80 to 100, because so many men have had to move out and go elsewhere to find work. You can see unemployment 2017, the darker the color, the higher the unemployment rate. Look at that, there's the Walmarts. And you can see they're in all the light colored areas where employment is a little bit better. And then, if you look at the election, the darker the blue on the right, the more likely the higher the vote count for Trump, and you will see it matches up almost entirely with unemployment, except for this corner of the state down here. Anybody care to guess why this corner of the state doesn't match up? It's a Native American reservation, but they did not vote for Trump. So you can see that this is where populism begins. And here's the vote count for Trump in San Diego County. He won 65% of the vote, way higher than the national average. This is the kind of place where populism goes and where people like Donald Trump are able to win. What is populism? Populism sees ordinary people as somehow being better than experts, because the experts they have too much knowledge, and we can't depend on them. We have to instead depend on ordinary people. That's one characteristic. Secondly, it manifests itself as nationalism, nativism, xenophobia, anti-intellectualism, anti-elitism. They're anti-state, anti-establishment, and anti-foreign. Now, we see populism growing not just in the city, but all around the world, as you notice in all these mentions there's a powerful erosion of support for democracy or populism. And we saw both Bernie Sanders people and Donald Trump's people talk about the system as rigged. Democracy is not working properly because it's rigged. And of course, anyone in Thailand will have heard the same thing about rigged democracy. That's important. This is populism. Obviously, this is a powerful challenge to globalization. Let's move back out to the world. Zoom in. There's Thailand. And zoom in to the northeast. And zoom in a little closer. Rangsit. And there you go. When I first came to Thailand, Rangsit was a small town built around 3 traffic circles and almost nothing else. Now it's a very, very large metropolis. You can see the clock tower is now electronic. That's a pretty big symbol of progress. When clock towers are no longer clocks, they're electronic. And, sorry, they have a brand new city hall, just like Ephraim with a brand new provincial hall. If Walmart is the symbol of small town America, what's the symbol of provincial Thailand? Yeah, it depends on which class you're looking at. Oh, sorry, before we get to that, sorry, I forgot I had these. People are left behind in New York too, of course. And you can see lots of people have not benefited from that example. Oh, sorry, I keep forgetting which is which. Okay, yeah, depending on which class you're looking at, it's either big C or it's central. Central has put shops in all around the country. And they're in certain towns and they're not in other towns. And it affects the geography of the country. Central Festival in New York is one of the most fascinating places I've ever been in my life. I went there 3 years ago. I began wandering through and something seemed fun to me. I couldn't figure out what it was. Here's a picture of Central Festival, and I wandered through, and eventually I realized there were 2 things that were really surprising that happened after I was down with the base of the country. First, there were hardly any people in here, even though it's massive, full of all kinds of great shops. Hardly anybody was there. Secondly, after I went down to the basement, I realized what seemed funny to me. Almost everybody above the basement was middle class, and most of them looked Thai, not Northeastern at all. But if you go down to the basement, the entire basement floor is covered with little booths. And they sell cheap goods. And the Northeastern Thais, poor people, were in the basement. And all the other Thais were white. Come to find out, according to the United Nations, Colombian cities of Bogota, Barranquilla, and Cali in South America, Lagos in Nigeria, Chiang Mai, and Udon Thani in Thailand show the sharpest economic divide in the world. Chiang Mai and Udon Thani are among the most inequitable towns in the entire world, with the rich doing incredibly well and the poor doing incredibly bad. And you can see the United States has gone way down that same path in previous years. You can see this is Ronald Reagan's period of globalization leading along there, and the gap between rich and poor has widened tremendously. If you're in the top 20%, sorry, the top 10%, you've done very, very well. Everybody else, flat. No change, no growth, no development. Globalization has not distributed resources evenly to everyone. Some people are being left behind. See the same thing in Thailand? That chart right there, you'll notice, is in Thai. That's the number of billionaires and their net worth. And you can see it's gone up hugely. It's more than doubled in a 4-year period. And up there, you can see the amount's gone up even more than that. We'll try the other micro. That works. Even I did that. Here's the other really interesting thing about Thailand. Lots of people in the middle class think, we're doing really well. But here it is by decile. And the decile count, if it were an exactly equal society, everyone would get 10% of the income, each decile group. Here's the poorest 10%. They're only getting 1% of all the benefits. And the next is only getting 3%, so the poor are getting badly cheated. But here's the middle class over here. If you're in the top 80%, the top 20% of income earners in Thailand, you're just getting your fair share. Only the top 20%, the 20 wealthiest percent in Thailand is getting more than their fair share. And they're taking a massive share in Thailand. So we have the same thing going on in the US. And in Thailand, in terms of this distribution of income. And this is what drives populism. Here we go, Douglas Kellner. Trump's supporters over the years have suffered economic deprivation, political alienation, humiliation, and a variety of hard times. Mortality rates for white males with high school education between the ages of 50 and 54. How many people die in that age group? And you can see the mortality rate for that group, white males with a low education who can't find jobs anywhere, is skyrocketing in the United States. And you can see by comparison, everybody else, the death rate is going down. Why are all those people dying all of a sudden? Alcohol, drugs, suicide, depression. These are people who don't fit in the new economy, and they have nothing to do. And this is the result. And you can see, here's comparison by other countries, and the U.S. stands out even against other countries. And it's a generation and a demographic group, because people who are educated don't fit this, because they can find jobs. There's a group of people who are being left entirely behind, and that's of deep concern. And these are Trump's people. Now, it's geographically concentrated, too, as you know. The Democrats expected to win up here what we call the Rust Belt. Well, that's where none of the jobs are. The red colors are low areas for employment. And the Deep South, and that's where Trump won the election. If we look at Thailand, we find something incredibly similar. These are migrated workers, people who had to leave home to find a job. And it's graded by region. So the central region is on the far left, and we move across regions as we go to the right. Anybody care to guess what this region is right here? That is Isan. Large numbers of Northeasterners have had to go elsewhere to find work. Again, being left behind by rapid change in the global economy. Kellner again. They appear to be looking for a political savior. Trump thus presents himself as a superhero. In this fairy tale, the billionaire king will fight and destroy all the nation's domestic and foreign enemies. Superman will triumph and provide a happy ending. There he is, Captain America Trump. Of course, he's not the only one who has portrayed himself as a superhero. And of course, if you like the other side, we have Rangsit.
Oh yeah, I remember him.
These are all populism. And these are all appealing to people as the superhero to the rescue. He will solve them, save them from the difficulties of globalization. And I obviously didn't make these. People, supporters make these. What's going on here? The important thing to keep in mind is populism is not a cause. You're not going to solve the problems by attacking populism. Populism is a result. These people are victims of the way globalization is currently proceeding. Now, that doesn't mean that we should just ignore them. We need to do something to solve the underlying problems. Don't beat the victims up with a stick. Look for what caused the problem in the first place. And that's what I think is the big issue going forward. So, in my mind, populism is coming about because of the way globalization is occurring. What do I mean by that? Many years ago, Gary Tepper wrote this. Up until the 1970s, the expansion of capital was always as national capital. You had Japanese Japanese capital, American capital, Thai capital, Chinese capital. It was always national. From the 1970s, capital began to expand more than ever as simply the company. Ownership began to correspond less and less with National Geographic's globalization as the close of the national history of capital and the beginning of the history of the expansion of capital sans nationality. Capital broke out of sovereign boxes first. Capital was the first to go global. Capital was the first to globalize. And not surprisingly, it's the best organized and the best resourced. When we have competitions or negotiations, who wins? Whoever's best organized and best resourced. We can see an example of this very, very quickly. Of course, who's left out? The states. We tend to forget that states have been heavily damaged by globalization, and also ordinary people have fallen behind in the way we're globalizing today. Let's look a little bit further at this. I'll go through this quickly, sorry, I know I'm coming close to my time. The World Economic Forum, this is the one that everybody loves to complain about, and there are all kinds of conspiracy theories, but if you go to its webpage, it was created in 1971, headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland, center of capitalism, and especially global capital. People send capital there so it can't be taxed, right? The World Economic Forum provides a platform for the world's 1,000 leading companies to shape a better future. Better for who? Members and partners benefit from tailored engagement based on their company strategy. The deeper a company's engagement, the greater is its ability to shape the forum agenda. Now, I'm not saying they're doing anything wrong here. This is a competition, and they've organized, and they've resourced themselves, and they're competing. But they got into the playing field first. And so they're benefiting at everyone else's expense. One of the ways they've benefited most is by convincing the states and everyone else that the interests of capital have to be separated from other interests. So the interests of labor, the interests of the environment, all those interests get set aside while we talk about free trade. And we talk about it completely separately. And everything else has to be talked about completely separately. And that actually benefits capital a lot, because they can talk about how to increase free trade without talking about all the people who will lose jobs, or without talking about how the environment might be damaged, but only talk about increasing trade, which benefits them. And they've been very effective at this. The WTO is the very best example. The WTO historically claimed that it wanted full employment. If you look through all its foundational documents, there's one reference to labor in all of its documents, and that's prison labor, which it doesn't apply. It doesn't talk at all about labor standards, labor rights, unions, nothing in the WTO. Completely separated, only trade. The same is true, of course, for the environment and all the rest of it. You may remember, if you're old enough, 1999, there were massive demonstrations at the WTO meetings in Seattle in the United States, and it led to violence. And after that, they began inviting NGOs to the WTO forums. They separated them, and they talked separately, and then capital gets together somewhere else. That's the real business. So the NGOs are sort of there, but not really. But it's a step ahead in a contest that capital is winning. When we look at its success, we saw a little bit before the gap between rich and poor widening, which is one way capital is winning. But here's another way that's hugely important. This is corporate tax paid as a percentage of GDP for the United States. And you can see the amount of tax revenue the United States government has gotten from corporations has declined consistently from the 1940s. There's one time it reversed slightly at the end of the Bush period, and then it went back down again. Donald Trump's just announced he's going to cut corporate tax rates in half, which will hugely, again, undermine government revenues. Now, it's important to keep in mind, this is not just good for corporations. This is bad governments need money to do lots of things we like build roads, or help poor people, or pay for universities or schools. And to the degree they lose revenue at that kind of a rate, they can't do things that we as societies hope they will do. And so capital is actually undermining the power of national governments. And that's really important to keep in mind. One reason why we have seen the rise of ASEAN and the EU is because that's a means to grow state governments bigger, so that they can actually respond more effectively to capital. So far, it's not working as effectively as we would hope, or we wouldn't have Brexit, and we would have lots more support from citizens for these kinds of organizations. They're not focused yet on the right things. All right. For centuries, sovereign states employed democratic or other political institutions to regulate and control capitalist markets, assuring a balance between liberty and equality, competition and justice, goods and jobs. Because we could vote, we had a means to check or balance capital. And in fact, Barber argues that's actually good for capital too, because they're so greedy, he believes, that at some point they'll take all the money and there will be nobody left to buy their goods. So they will essentially destroy themselves if they're not checked. Now, though, capital went outside the boundaries of the state, and you can no longer control capital. And you can no longer guarantee that your state has the resources it needs. Capitalism has escaped its democratic box. Populists who claim that democracy is rigged actually are not right. It's not rigged per se. What's happened is the state can no longer control capital. Because capital will just say, if you don't like it, I'll go somewhere else. And so you can't raise taxes, you can't protect the environment, you can't do the things you want to do. Okay. What about citizens? Citizens are the least well-resourced and the least organized of any group. They're almost entirely unorganized, traditionally, especially at the local level. So we have international organizations that try to represent people. The ITO, that should be ILO, International Labor Organization, for example, is meant to represent workers. But it's poorly resourced and poorly organized and largely ineffective. NGOs, as we know, are not democratic themselves. How many of you voted for president of the Red Cross the last time they had an election? Oh, that's right, they don't have elections. NGOs do not have democracy, so it's not really the solution to the problem. They also tend to be poorly resourced, poorly organized, and often ineffective, at least outside their own spheres. They can't effectively fight for the rights of all across different issues. What we have then is globalization, where capital sees the advantage because it has the best resources, the best organization, and it's mostly getting the benefits. And that's the problem with globalization. That's the problem with populism. And if we don't solve that underlying problem and put states and ordinary people on more equal footing with capital, we're not going to win against populism. It's not going to happen. And Barbara said pretty much the same thing. Unless we can make the national and local participation of citizens symmetrical with the power of transnational and global anarchic players, there are likely to be no answers to injustice and marginalization. We have to build up the resources of states and ordinary citizens to compete more effectively with capital in the challenge that's ahead of us. So states are going to need to cooperate better, so it's harder for capital to say, if you don't do this for us, we'll go somewhere else where they will. If you don't lower taxes, we'll go to another country that will lower taxes. If you don't let us destroy the environment, we'll go somewhere else where we can. States need to be strengthened to do that. And regional bodies like the EU or ASEAN are the groups that need to lead the way. Beyond that, ordinary citizens have to find a way to get involved in the globalization agenda. And that's the biggest challenge, because they're not well organized and they're not well resourced. NGOs can help some, but as we've seen, they're just not enough. So where to go from here? I don't have final answers, but I have some optimism, and it is technology leading the way with this optimism. This is the last thing we have. Organization. Social media allow ordinary citizens like you to get organized for all kinds of things. The Arab Spring, all across the Middle East, people organized and demanded democracy using the internet. It can be used in other ways. The Trump and Sanders organizations, both populist, use social media very, very effectively. So technology may be bringing us the tools we need to increase organization among ordinary people so they can have more of a say in globalization. Secondly, for resources, fintech, the new financial technologies also hold out hope for ordinary citizens. And especially that's true with crowdsourcing and peer-to-peer loans. And we probably know both the Sanders campaign and the Trump campaign were underfunded compared to competitors, but they very effectively used some of these techniques, and that helped them to do very well in their election. So fintech for resources, social media for organization, both hold out considerable hope in helping to empower citizens to have a greater role in globalization. That's basically what I have to say. Again, I'm not anti-globalization. I just think the agenda is a little bit shifted too far in one direction right now. We need to balance the power of the different players. Sorry if I don't know.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Dr. James Oki. When I first listened to your talk, I have to admit that I didn't quite understand the linkage between the two, the globalization and populism. But then it came into my understanding a little bit at the time that if you agree with me, you know, when he showed us the pictures of the situation, the political situation in Thailand, oh, okay, it came to my understanding. Okay, I got it a little bit at the time, you know. And it seems to me that you are a big fan of the Donald Trump. If not moment, you know. Okay, good to know that. Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you very much for that. You know, we know the pros and also the cons of the globalization. Well, I think we have a lot to discuss about this. Actually, days would be enough. You know, not hours like this, like today we have time. But I will leave the questions and answers to the later part of our session. Then I'd like to ask you to touch upon about the fintech, right? Because the technology will help us to some extent about this. Well, welcome for the newcomers, okay? You missed the first great presenter, okay? But luckily you will also have listened to 2 more keynote speakers for our session. For the next keynote speaker, okay, the topic is about fintech, the new normal. As I already said at the beginning, that fintech as a financial technology, right? We know the full term of the financial technology, and then the short one is fintech. Okay, how the fintech affects to our life. You know, I'd like to raise this question and get you to be well aware of these fintech technology changes in nowadays. And the topic is about the fintech, and we will come to understand a little bit more. As in the morning we already understand a little bit, but we'll come more for this understanding about the fintech. And our second keynote speaker is very well experienced in this topic, and she is the head of the consulting of the PwC Thailand. It's a PricewaterhouseCoopers, and she is a consulting lead partner of the PwC, and also responsible for the overseeing of management consulting practice, which provides the services in the areas of the strategy and also the business transformation program or the change management, information technologies as well. Okay, and she has earned lots of experience in this fintech financial technology. Before coming to today conference, I have searched the internet. Nowadays, when we know nothing or know little thing about something, what we will do is to search the internet. And then I searched, the term, the technical term as fintech Thailand. What happened? It came up with this our keynote speaker. Okay, then she is very popular person in this topic, and then every one of us will come to have a listen together with me. Okay, please join me in welcome Kun Vilaipon to be